Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Korachi, and in this video playlist we'll focus on penetration testing according to CompTIA Pen Test Plus certification. However, in this video here I'm going to start with module 1, which is Introduction to Pen Testing. Okay, so now we're going to cover what is the goals of cybersecurity, what is penetration testing, the cyber kill chain, and the Pen Test Toolkit, and some other topics here. Okay, so the first goal here is, what is the goals of cybersecurity? Obviously, the primary goal of cybersecurity is to protect information systems, networks, and data from unauthorized access, theft, damage, or other forms of cyber attacks. Now, the cybersecurity aims to ensure the confidentiality, as you can see over here, integrity and availability of the information and the system, and prevent unauthorized modification or destruction of data. So basically, the primary goal is, for confidentiality is what? Ensuring that sensitive information is kept private and only accessible to authorized users or entities. Now, when it comes to integrity, we are ensuring that information and system are accurate, complete, and free from unauthorized modifications or tampering. Now, for availability here, we are ensuring that information and system are available when needed, and they are not disrupted or made unavailable, due to any cyber attack or other causes. Okay, so now, for the goals of pen testers here, when you look at it here, you can see the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the complete opposite of confidentiality is what? The disclosure of confidential information. Now, for integrity here is that the opposite of it is alteration or corruption of integrity of information. And here we have the opposite of availability is the denial of availability of access to resources. Okay, so the question is, I'm sure you're asking, what is penetration testing? Now, it's commonly called pen testing or ethical hacking here. Now, this is how we refer that to it, but usually we call it the pen tester, not ethical hacker or something like this. Especially like when we start looking for job ads, they call it pen tester. Now, the penetration testing refers to authorized simulated attacks on computing system to identify security vulnerabilities. Now, these tests aim to evaluate the security status of the system by uncovering exploitable weakness from malicious actors. Before malicious actors can exploit these types of attacks. Okay, so what are the key characteristics here? I mean, one of the things here, we look at it. This is authorized security test on the target to discover vulnerabilities, which means that it has to be performed with explicit permission from the organization owning the target here. You can't just walk in and do attacks. It has to be with explicit permission. And basically, this is designed to emulate the potential real-world attack scenarios without causing harm. Okay, so what are the targets here? So when we look at the targets here, I'm gonna break it down into a few things. I mean, the first step is computing devices. Okay, like servers, desktops, IoT devices, and network hardware. Now, when it comes to application, here we have the web, mobile, and desktop application. We have the physical resources like data centers, locks, surveillance system, and access controls. And also we have the personnel. We need to assess the social engineering. If the employees fall for social engineering techniques, like phishing attacks, for example. Now here, of course, when it comes to vulnerability, I mean, as a pen tester, we need to find any flaw in the software, hardware, operation, or procedure. Okay, so when it comes to software, we're looking for bugs, insecure configuration, or outdated systems. When we look for hardware, we look for design flaws, misconfigured devices, or weak encryption. For operational procedure, obviously we need to look at things like poor management of passwords, inadequate user training, or insecure communication protocols. So this will lead us to something called exploit. So what is exploit? Exploit is referred to, as you see it here on the screen, to software, data, or a series of commands that take advantage of vulnerabilities to cause unintended or harmful behavior in a target. Obviously, exploits can be, or it is critical in penetration testing, because it will help us to demonstrate the feasibility and the impact of the vulnerabilities in the system. Okay, so the other question you might be asking: when do security professionals conduct pen tests? Now, so penetration tests are conducted at strategic intervals to ensure the security status of the organization, system, and network. Now, one of the things here we have when a major change in computing environment occurs. So what does it mean? I mean, or why? Why we need to do that? Well, when there's significant updates or changes may introduce a new vulnerabilities to the system. Examples for this, can be like deployment of a new application or system, major infrastructure changes such as cloud migrations or hardware replacement, application updates, like this application update comes with the new features or patches, or any changes in security configurations or policies here on this. Also another thing, like imagine two big companies, they are merging together into one company, and they want to merge their systems together into one system. That also could be a potential over here. Now another thing here we have, according to the schedule for compliance requirements, like the first one is the payment card industry data security standard, PCI-DSS, and this is the latest requirement. So that's okay. So when we talk about the PCI, think about it as a regulatory and industry standards often mandate regular testing to ensure compliance and mitigate risks. There are so many frameworks and standards out there, and this is one of them, the PCI-DSS. Of course, there's other compliance standards here, like the HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. There's the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. That's one of the things also you could think of. So, I mean, obviously there are so many of them, and it depends on where you add industry and so on. You must follow these. Okay. Now, also it can be as part of a regular testing schedule. Okay. Well, common schedules can be like quarterly, semi-annual, or annual pen tests, depending on the system criticality, how critical the system is. More frequent tests for high-risk systems or those exposed to public networks that requires more often penetration testing. Okay. Now, so what is the best practices for timing pen test? Well, okay, so again, it depends on the type of business, and it depends on the system that can have high business impact or exposure here, and that's where the things that you need to focus on. So here we have another question. You might be asking, how do security professionals pen test? Now, pen testing is carried out using structured methodologies that provide standardized guidance. Those type of, there are different types of methodology. Probably you want to become familiar with, learn about them. Why we need to follow standardized methodology? Because it ensures a consistent and thorough evaluation of system vulnerabilities. The methodology used often depends on the target's nature and specific compliance requirement. So here we could see that we have plenty of methodologies. We got OWASP, NIST, PTES, PCI, DSS. Each one of them has a specific purpose. Now, let's start with the OWASP. The OWASP testing guide focuses on web application security. This methodology identifies vulnerabilities, such as SQL injection attacks, XSS, and authentication flow. On the other hand, here we have the NIST. It's a technical guide to information security testing and assessment. It's basically, you look at it as a general purpose framework suitable for testing diverse IT environments, providing detailed procedures for network and system penetration testing. Okay, the PTES, well, that's, stands for Penetration Testing Execution Standard. Okay, so this one here is a very comprehensive guide for all phases of pen testing, from pre-engagement to post-engagement, applicable to networks, application, and infrastructures. And we have also another one. I missed it. I forgot to mention it here. The OSSTMM, which stands for Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual. It focuses on operational security, offering guidance for analyzing vulnerabilities in networks, physical security, and processes. Now, the last and not the least, of course, is the PCI DSS testing standard. Now, this is explicitly designed for systems that process, store, or transmit payment card information, which is obviously, you could tell this is applicable for e-commerce, Now, this methodologies, any site that they need to process payment card information, they must adhere to PCI DSS compliance requirements. Now, see here, the pen test methodologies provide standard guidance, and process to conduct a pen test. Now, what the choice of methodology, I just want to make sure that you understand, depends on the type of system and compliance requirement. So web application, definitely you need OWASP testing guide, because it helps you identify application-specific vulnerabilities here. Now, for enterprise IT environment, I would use NIST or the PTES, because they provide comprehensive coverage of networks, application, and hardware. And if that's a website, obviously, as I told you, you need the PCI DSS compliance, okay, which basically mandate thorough test on card holder data environments like e-commerce. And now, like if you want physical security or processes, the OSSTMM, which is again open source security testing methodology manual, that's it is suitable for assessing non-digital vulnerabilities here. Now, who performs pen test? Well, penetration testing can be conducted by different types of entities, depending on organizations' needs, resources, and objectives. Now, these entities must be trusted and authorized to ensure the test is ethical and effective. Now, obviously, there are several key considerations for choosing tester. In my opinion, you need to look for the qualification and certification. I would look for people with having credentials, such as OSCP, Offensive Security Certified Professional. These are, it's not really easy to pass this type of certification, okay? And experience, obviously, you want to ensure that testers have expertise in the system and technologies relevant to the target environment. Obviously, you want to deal with the company that ensure trust and confidentiality, which means that you need to verify the entity's reputation and implement non-disclosure agreements in DAS to protect sensitive information. And of course, compliance requirements, in this case here, some regulations mandate independent third-party testing for compliance verification. That's something probably you need to look into it. Now, adopting the hacker mindset. Okay, so adopting the hacker mindset to effectively conduct penetration testing, you as a security professional must adopt the mindset of adversary. Think like the enemy. This involves understanding how attackers think and operate, enabling them to anticipate and uncover vulnerabilities before malicious actors can exploit them. So the first thing, like I mentioned, you need to think like adversary. Well, as a security professional, you need to analyze systems, networks, and applications from perspective of potential attacker. You need to look for weaknesses like misconfiguration, software bugs, inadequate user training that could be exploited. Discover a single exploitable vulnerability. Well, unlike defenders, honestly, attackers focus on identifying just one weakness that grants them unauthorized access. Only one. If it does grant them unauthorized access, they'll take it. So even a minor vulnerability can serve as an entry point, by the way, even the minor one, okay? Enabling attackers to escalate privileges or compromise critical systems. Now, attacker only needs to win once. Well, it's true. A single successful exploit can lead to devastating consequences, such as data breaches, financial losses, or worse, reputational damage. Attackers often have unlimited time to study targets, unlike us, making persistence and creativity their strength. Again, unlike us, we have a lot of things to worry about. The defenders need to win every time. Well, security team must secure all possible entry points and address every potential vulnerability to keep systems safe. This requires a proactive and holistic approach to risk management, continuous monitoring, and regular testing here. Now, so the benefits of the pen test, obviously, we could see that they provide knowledge that we cannot obtain elsewhere, assuming that they have the right knowledge and the right expertise. Because once you hire the right person, they can uncover vulnerabilities and weaknesses that may not be apparent through other forms of security testing or monitoring. Now, this is because they simulate a real-world attack, allowing security professional to identify how attackers might attempt to gain unauthorized access to a system or application. Now, they provide a blueprint for remediation. Now, once vulnerabilities have been identified, the pen testing provides a detailed blueprint for how to remediate them. This allows security professionals to prioritize their efforts and focus on the most critical vulnerabilities first here. Now, rather than trying to address every possible security issue, which is almost impossible and not feasible. Now, provides essential focus information about attack targets. Now, pre-testing provides essential focused information about specific attack target. Now, this allows security professional to gain a deep understanding of the specific vulnerabilities and weaknesses that need to be addressed in order to improve the overall security status or position of the organization here. Okay, so let's talk about pen test teams. We'll focus on the teams and other stakeholders. Now, the first one here, we could see the red team, blue team, purple team, other stakeholders. Now, when you see that red team, they are offensive attack team. Blue team are defensive protect team. Now, purple team is data collection and implementation team, and other stakeholders are non-team members. And now here you could see for the red team, but basically they have members with their own specialized skill sets, by the way. They could be like team leaders, project managers, programmers, social engineers, network, wireless engineer, server, operating system administrator, anybody, okay, who has the knowledge, okay, to carry out those tasks like ethical hacking, pen testing, black box testing, social engineering, web application scanning, vulnerability exploitation. Now, the blue team, as I mentioned, they are defensive, may consist of IT team members or contracted security services. They are responsible for preparation, detection, identification, and containment, recovery, lesson learned, and other things. And their tasks include infrastructure security, damage control, IR, operational security, threat hunting, and digital forensics. Now, the purple team, they basically observes red and blue teams and guides them to a more effective test. They understand the big picture and provides oversight, such as gather results, perform analysis, report. They could participate in improvement, facilitation, data analytics, red versus blue skill testing, system improvements, collaborative security, and so on. And finally, we have those non-team members, which can include management, development, and the legal. Okay, each one of them, they have their own role and purpose. Now, one thing we need to mention that any company could have their own internal teams versus the external teams. Now, there is always advantage and disadvantage of doing this. When we talk about advantages of having internal team, like obviously you could tell that they have in-depth knowledge of organization system and infrastructure, and they are also familiar with the company's security policies and procedures. They have easy access to internal system and resources, and obviously this is more cost effective than hiring external teams. We don't have to pay for a company. Now, disadvantage of internal teams, it's a potential conflicts of interest or bias, group to another group, may lack the specialized expertise of external teams, because they're not doing this on a daily basis. It's not their core job to do pen testing, comparing to a company, who employ pen testers. May have limited objectivity, may not have the same level of independence as external teams, and that could be an issue here. Now, for external teams, the advantage, they have greater objectivity and independence. They have specialized expertise, by the way, and experience with a wide range of systems and technologies, because a company, they hire multiple people with different skill sets. They provide a fresh perspective on the organization security situation. They can bring new tools and techniques to the testing process, probably the internal people are not familiar with, The disadvantage is may not have the same level of knowledge about the organization system and infrastructure, of course, because they were hired, they are outsiders. May require more time to become familiar with the organization policies and procedures. More expensive, obviously, because you have to pay for a company. May require more time to coordinate and manage testing process. Now, in general, the choice between internal and external pen test team will depend on a number of factors, including like the size and the complexity of the organization. the level of expertise required for the testing, and the organization's specific goals and objectives. The fact is many organizations choose to use a combination of both internal and external teams in order to achieve the most comprehensive testing possible here. Now, pen testing process here. Okay, so this flow chart you're looking at represents the phases of pen testing. It's a structured process used by cybersecurity professionals to assess and strengthen the security of system and network. Now, inside each one of them, there will be definitely a bunch of activities that you need, to become familiar with. Like the first step, the planning and scoping, So what is the objectives of planning and scoping? Well, define the scope of the project. Define the goals, the rules of engagement for the penetration test. One of the key activities is that you need to understand the organization requirements and objectives. You need to determine which target you want me to work on. Do you want me to work on web applications, or do you want to work on servers or networks, or what? And then during this phase, we need to define the constraints, like specific system to exclude. Of course, we have to establish, timelines and deliverables here. So what is the outcome of this phase? Well, a clear road map and agreement between the tester and the organization. Okay, so once we finish this phase, we jump in. Okay, so talking about information gathering and vulnerability identification, which is the second phase, The objectives is to collect as much information as possible at the target and identify potential vulnerabilities. One of the key activities there is that we perform reconnaissance, which is like open source intelligence. We'll be using a lot of tools, like Nmap, Shodan, or Maltego, or plenty of tools to scan and map the environment. And then we'll jump into enumerate services, application, and their versions, which is very important. I'm assuming stuff like this you have taken it in ethical hacking, so you should be familiar with the concept. And of course, you need to check for known vulnerabilities here when it comes to vulnerability identification, like using Nessus or OpenVAS, So the outcome of this phase is we have a list of potential entry points and vulnerabilities to exploit. Then we jump into attacking and exploitation. The objective is here to exploit identified vulnerabilities to determine the level of risk and assess attackers might gain. Now, the key activities in this phase is that we use tools and scripts like Metasploit, Burp Suite, or your own custom exploits. You could do, like, for example, password cracking. You could try to do SQL injection. You could try to do cross-site scripting, etc., etc., etc. And then you try to do like escalate privileges to gain deeper access to the system. You probably want to test post-exploitation activities like, persistence mechanism. Okay. So what is the outcome of this phase? Well, simply, you demonstrated the risk and proof of exploitation. Now, finally, we have the reporting and the communication results here. The objectives is you document findings, risks, and recommendation in a format understandable by technical and non-technical stakeholders here, because your report will be given to the management as well. So what is the key activities? Well, you write a detailed report including vulnerabilities identified, exploitation methods and their impact, recommendations for mitigation, and of course, obviously, it is expected that you conduct a debriefing session with organization leadership and technical team. Okay, so great. So what's the outcome? Well, the outcome is clear understanding of vulnerabilities and steps to improve security that you would recommend it to your client, to the organization here. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the cyber kill chain. So what is cyber kill chain? Well, it's a model that describes the stages of a cyber attack from perspective of the attacker. The model was developed by Lockheed Martin back in 2011 and has become a widely used framework for understanding and preventing cyber attacks. The model is based on the idea that a cyber attack is a multi-stage process and that by understanding each one of those stages, you see it over here, okay, defenders can identify and disrupt attacks before they cause significant damage. So the first one here we're looking at reconnaissance. Okay, so this involves attackers gathering information about the target using open source intelligence, vulnerability scanning, social engineering techniques. This phase aims to identify exploitable weakness in organization, system, network, and personnel. Now, second thing here, sorry, this is weaponization here. Now, in this phase, attackers craft malicious payload tailored to the information that was collected right here. So that this means the quality information gathered in reconnaissance plays a major role in creating the right type of weaponized, exploit. Now, this often involves pairing malware with delivery mechanisms such as phishing emails or exploit kits here. Okay, phase number three, we have delivery phase. Okay, so the attacker transmit the payload to the target. Oh, there are plenty of ways to do this. For example, now we could do the phishing emails. We could send malicious links. We could give them infected USB drives or thumb drives, or we try to exploit services like RDP or SSH or any services that we discover that there's availabilities associated with it. Now, once the payload is delivered, the exploitation phase begins here, right here, number four. Okay, where attackers exploit software vulnerabilities, weak configurations, or stolen credentials to gain unauthorized access. Now, let's assume, okay, you had a very successful exploitation. So, okay, so this will take us to the installation phase right here, which involves the attacker establishing a foothold in the target environment by installing backdoors, trojans, persistence mechanisms that allow for long-term access to the compromised system here. Okay, following the installation, attackers move to the command and control C2 phase where they establish communication between the compromised system and their control service. This allows them basically to issue commands remotely, exfiltrate data, or deploy additional payloads here. Now, finally, when comes action on objectives here, attackers achieve their ultimate goal, such as data theft, could be like system disruption or sabotage. They may also attempt to cover their tracks by deleting logs or using advanced techniques to evade detection. Now, understanding these phases allows you or your organization, okay, basically to disrupt these attacks because you understand the phases and the points in the chain, which is obviously by understanding this, that will help you reduce the impact and improving overall security resilience. Now, so while the original, by the way, I want to point out the original cyber kill chain is widely used. There's advanced frameworks like MITRE attack and unified kill chain provide even more granular details about tactics and techniques attackers use here. Now, okay, so basically, what is the difference between the kill chain versus pen test? Okay, I mean, briefly, you could tell that the cyber kill chain is a high level framework for understanding the stages of a cyber attack. Now, while the pen testing is a more focused approach to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the organization system and application. Now, Both approaches are important. There's no one less important than the other. Okay, so I mean, I think it's very important for you to understand both of them. Okay, they are important both for identifying and mitigating cyber threats, and they can be used in, in conjunction to or together to provide a comprehensive understanding of organization security status here. Now, toolkit, there are plenty of toolkits out there. Like, you have common software types used in Penta. You got scanners, credential testing tools, debuggers, open source intelligence, wireless tools, web application tools, social engineering tools, remote access tools, network tools, steganography tools, cloud tools. So there are many, many different types of tools out there that that you need to become familiar with, if you want to work in a pen testing environment. Now, one of the favorite tools is called the Nmap. It's an open source network scanning tool used primarily for security auditing and network discovery. Now, again, if you study ethical hacking, this tool is very important part of ethical hacking. It helps you in map to do host discovery, identify live hosts on a network, to do port scanning. If you want to determine which ports are open, closed, or filtered. Service and version detection. Identify the services running on particular target and what type of version related to it. Operating system detection. Also, in map, there's it has NSE, scriptable interactions, executes scripts for tasks such as vulnerability detection, compliance auditing, and so on. So anyway, I do have like several videos about Nmap. You could watch each one of them, and each one of them is designed specifically for certain important features for Nmap. Now we have OWASP ZAP. Again, this is another open source web application security scanner developed by the OWASP, widely used by security professionals and developers to identify vulnerabilities in the web application. Now, OWASP ZAP is particularly favored for its user-friendly interface and comprehensive feature set. Now, what are the use cases? Oh, plenty. Like, penetration testing for manual and automated discovery of vulnerabilities in web application, for DevSecOps integrated into CI/CD pipelines to identify vulnerabilities early in the development lifecycle. You got web application assessment, comprehensive analysis of web apps during development, staging, and production phases here. Now, last but not least, we have the Metasploit framework. That's another thing that I strongly recommend, whether, to study this, to learn this, okay, to become familiar with this. It has so much tools, so many things that you could do with it. Now, it's an open source penetration testing and exploitation framework used by a lot of people, especially professionals, to identify, validate, and exploit vulnerabilities. Okay, widely recognized as one of the most powerful tools for ethical hacking penetration testing. Now, as I always say, I always recommend that you do update to your Kali Linux before you run this, because they will keep adding more and more exploits and payloads here. Okay, so in summary, now we covered quite a bit. You should be able to describe what is the penetration testing process and its phases, activities, and team members. You should be able to describe the CIA and the DAD threads. You should be able to describe the ethical hacking mindset and some of the tools used in penetration testing. Finally, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video lecture. I hope you find it useful. If yes, please hit the like button or subscribe to my channel. Again, thank you so much for watching. Take care.